Christian Bale has played a lot of interesting roles across his career, but what if we combine them? What if one day the psychopathic Patrick Bateman woke up in the body of Bruce Wayne from the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy? Assuming he doesn't question his new reality, how would the movie change if Bruce Wayne had the mind and personality of Patrick Bateman? Or, as we will call him, Patrick Batman. Patrick wakes up in a dank room, not sure where he is or what is happening. A nearby man asks him if he had a nightmare. Patrick, not quite sure if he is dreaming or not, says nothing and stares at the man. As he feels his face rugged and bushy, he panics and demands the man tell him where he is. The man explains that they're in a prison camp. Patrick lets out a laugh and proceeds to get up and leave to locate a guard. Very quickly, he finds a group of guards outside and approaches them. "Look, there's been a mistake. I'm Patrick Bateman. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here. I'm a stockbroker from the United States of America." One of the guards yells, "Thief, get back to work." Patrick scoffs and says, "Look here, pal, your camp is quite frankly a disgusting mess. I would like to speak to your higher-ups immediately." The guards shove Patrick to the ground and begin laughing at him. Patrick jumps up, grabbing the guard and slamming him into a nearby table. The other guards attempt to subdue Patrick, but he manages to quickly knock all of them into the mud. As more approach, he begins fighting them off as he yells that they don't know who they're screwing with. Suddenly, a guard runs in, firing his rifle in the air. Patrick freezes as some of the beaten guards drag him back to his cell. As he sits in his cell, he wonders how he ended up here and how he's going to get out. A man in the corner suddenly speaks up. "Are you so desperate to fight criminals that you locked yourself in with them? Even if it meant fighting corrupt guards as well?" Patrick looks at the man, wondering why someone in prison is wearing a suit that expensive. "The world is too small a place for someone like Bruce Wayne to disappear, no matter how deep he chooses to sink." Great, Patrick thinks to himself. Another clown thinks I'm someone else. He decides to play along, as maybe this man can get this Bruce Wayne out of this place. So he asks him, "I am merely Deckard, but the man I speak for, Ra's al Ghul, a man greatly feared by the criminal underworld, would like to offer you a path." Thinking that this may be his only chance to get out, he tells Deckard that he accepts the offer. Deckard tells him, "Ra's al Ghul shares your hatred of evil and wishes to serve true justice. He will teach you to be more than just a man. Someone so devoted that no one can stop you. You will become something else entirely. A legend, Mr. Wayne." Patrick likes the sound of this and smiles as Deckard continues. "You will be released tomorrow. Search the eastern slopes for a rare blue flower. Pick one and carry it to the top of the mountain. You will find what you are looking for." The next day, Patrick is kicked out of a truck onto the road. He looks around, disgusted by his own filth and the landscape around him. "I bet this place doesn't even have payphones or cab service." Realizing his options are to wander roads in hopes of finding his way back home, or to find out more about this group that Deckard spoke of, he decides to start looking for the flower. At best, maybe they have a phone he can borrow. Not long after walking into the eastern slopes, he spots many blue flowers. He shakes his head. "Rare? What a joke. I've seen rarer flowers than this." He fills his bag with flowers and heads toward the mountain. He hikes up the mountain for most of the day. Annoyed by the cold and the lack of amenities that he's become so accustomed to, he thinks to himself, "If they don't have a shower and razors at this place, I'm going to shove these flowers right up Ra's al Ghul's ass." Suddenly, he notices a large palace-like structure on the side of the mountaintop. "Now this is more like it," he thinks to himself. As he enters the building, he notices a man sitting on a throne. He pulls down his scarf as armed men and Deckard enter the room. Deckard asks Patrick what it is that he seeks. Patrick responds, "Raz, my man, it's great to meet you, but I am in desperate need of a razor and a hot shower. Do you see this raccoon growing on my face? I mean, it's like lady repellent incarnate." The man glares at Patrick before Deckard kicks him to the ground. "Death does not wait for you to be ready. Death does not consider your appearance. And here you will face death." Patrick jumps up and swings at Deckard, but is immediately knocked back to the ground. Deckard looks into Patrick's eyes and says, "You are afraid, but not of me. Tell me, Mr. Wayne, what do you fear?" Patrick thinks to himself, not knowing what it is he is afraid of. Patrick trains with the League of Shadows over the next 5 years, mastering all known forms of martial arts and several unknown to those outside of its training. He is then trained in the art of deception, as well as over 20 separate practices of swordsmanship. And most of all, he is taught that he must become more than just a man in the mind of his opponent. One day, Descartes begins creating a compound using the blue flower that Patrick collected. He tells Patrick that he believes his fear is of himself, a fear of his drive to do great, terrible things, a fear of what he might be capable of doing. He puts the smoking compound forward and tells him to breathe, as it is time to journey inwards. Patrick and Descartes both wait, as Patrick wonders why he's not feeling anything. Descartes becomes very quiet as he covers his face and steps into a group of shadows. You must learn to harness your fear and make it a weapon against your enemies. Patrick wonders why this compound is still doing nothing to him. Could it be that it's just a placebo, or has all the years of substance abuse built up a tolerance to these sort of things? The group separates as Patrick approaches a box. Embrace your worst fear, become one with your darkness, Descartes says from the shadows. Patrick opens the box and, to his surprise, there's nothing. The box is empty. Patrick's lack of response causes a silence amongst the group, except for one who ever so slightly tilts their head in confusion. Patrick notices this and quickly acts on it and unmasks Descartes. Ra's al Ghul claps from above and congratulates Patrick for showing no fear and somehow noticing Descartes. They take Patrick upstairs and bring a prisoner before him. They tell him that in order to join the League of Shadows, he must first showcase his commitment to do what's necessary. Descartes hands Patrick a blade, and with no hesitation, Patrick brutally swings at the prisoner. Ra's al Ghul smiles and welcomes him into the League of Shadows. As Gotham's favorite son, you will be strategically placed to strike at the heart of criminality. The city has become a breeding ground for suffering and injustice. It is beyond saving and must be allowed to die. This is the most important function of the League of the Shadows. Descartes turns to Patrick and apologizes for his deception and informs him that he is Ra's al Ghul. Our plan is to allow Gotham to tear itself apart through fear. I have a man in the city that is currently working on a way to weaponize the very flowers you experienced earlier. Patrick thinks to himself, well, they don't do crap, so this plan isn't a very good one. Raz continues, there are strategic points in the city that you are in a unique position to acquire for us. We need you to return to your life as Bruce Wayne, and when the time comes, assist us in taking down this city and give us access to all of Wayne Enterprise and its surrounding locations. Patrick nods as he wonders what's going to happen when he runs into the real Bruce Wayne. We have reached out to your butler and informed him of your return. He is currently awaiting you at a nearby runway. Later that day, Patrick approaches the private jet as Alfred steps out to greet him and makes a joking comment on his rugged appearance. Patrick drops his head and says, well, I'm in the middle of nowhere with no access to my morning creams or decent hair products. What do you expect? Just get me home so I can get into something that complements my body better than these rags. On the flight, Alfred attempts chatting with Patrick. Patrick looks at him judgingly and asks, wait, you're a butler, right? Let me ask you something, genuinely. Do I pay you to waste my time with idle chit-chat? Alfred pauses for a moment, wondering what has become of Bruce in his time away. Patrick continues, don't bore me with nonsense. I have become more than a man. I have become death. I could end you in 22,000 ways if I wanted. Alfred, becoming offended with the disrespect, asks him if he plans on wearing a cape and horns if he truly has become death. Patrick thinks to himself, that's not a bad idea. I should look the part. Appearances are everything, and if I want to strike fear into my enemies, I should look like death itself. Alfred continues, not to upset your new disposition, but we might want to figure out the legal ramifications of bringing you back from the dead. You've been gone 7 years. Richard declared you dead to take control of your company. Patrick grins as he realizes this Bruce Wayne has not only likely passed away, but is also filthy rich. Patrick decides he might just stay as Bruce Wayne a little longer, but one thing's for certain, he definitely needs to pay this man that stole the company a visit. Not long after they land, Patrick begins making a list of things he will need for his costume of death. As he's designing his look, he notices a bat trapped in the manor. He thinks to himself that this could be a good idea for a look, a creepy bat emerging from the shadows. The next morning, he searches the ground and finds an underground cavern, perfect for hiding evidence. Over the next few months, he gathers the materials to build his own suit of death. Alfred introduces him to Lucius Fox, someone who he knew could assist him with anything he needed for his new devotion. After creating his suit, he begins to create weapons, lethal throwing stars, firearms, grappling hooks, projectile blades, anything that will allow him to take out the criminals of Gotham. First, Patrick approaches Detective Gordon and forces him to give up all of his information on the criminal networks that are interwoven throughout Gotham. Once he gets the information he needs, he eliminates any evidence that he was there. The following months are brutal as Patrick Bateman begins to take on his new persona and starts eliminating all of the criminals throughout Gotham. He eliminates the man who now runs Wayne Enterprises. He takes out corrupt police, crime bosses, even homeless and stray pets begin going missing. The police begin to take notice that more and more people are disappearing, but no one knows where they're disappearing to. In fact, anyone who tries looking into the disappearances ends up going missing as well. This creates a panic within the police force, and most of them, with criminal ties, try to get rid of any trace that they have to the crime world in fear of what comes from the shadows. Patrick continues on this brutal rampage, taking out so much of the criminal network and underground that it barely exists anymore. But few criminals are left are even afraid to communicate over fear that it'll somehow get intercepted and they'll be found. Even Crane, who was recruited by the League of Shadows to make the fear toxin, becomes too afraid to continue his work and flees the country, as whatever is coming for the criminals shows no mercy and leaves no witnesses. Something that the League of Shadows begins to notice. Crime is finally seeming to dissipate throughout Gotham City for the first time in as long as anyone can remember. Not because of some sort of justice, but because of fear. One day, Alfred confronts Patrick during his normal morning routine. He tells him, "I don't mean to get involved in your business, but the whole city is talking and becoming increasingly more paranoid about the missing people. This all started at the same time you came back from the dead and returned to Gotham. Now, consider the fact that to the public, you never leave your home. And now Richard Earle, the man who essentially stole Wayne Enterprises from the Waynes, is missing. The fact that people haven't already been asking questions is a shock. If I were you, I would start working on your alibi." Patrick annoyingly says, "I don't have time to do other things. I have become death itself, and I don't need your paranoia ruining a perfectly good morning routine. Don't bother me unless I call for you. You're my butler, not my attorney. If I have a problem with the toilet, I'll summon you." Patrick knew that Alfred was right, but he wasn't going to give someone that he viewed as beneath him the dignity of being right. So he decided to go and spend some money. He bought a new car, he found some dates, and bought every 3 Michelin star restaurant in Gotham. During dinner, the people he was eating with asked what he thought about all the missing people. Patrick put on a serious face and said, "I think the more important thing to focus on is the current world climate, for God's sake. And what about world hunger, shelter for the homeless, ending racism and discrimination? We need to promote civil rights and equity. Oh, and don't forget about equal rights for women. These are the things that are important to our current political discourse today. These are the things we should be focused on, not some agent of death ridding our city of criminals." He chuckled after his rant as his company nodded in agreement. "You are absolutely right. We need more people like you in the world, Bruce." Another person in the group chimes in, "But Bruce, I really would like to know what you actually think about the disappearances." Patrick looks over and says, "Actually, guys, I just remembered I need to return some DVDs, so I'll see you later." As Patrick is leaving, he leans towards the valet and smiles as he rudely tells him, "Do you really want to be doing this for the rest of your life? Get a real job." Rachel, Bruce's childhood friend, is walking by and notices Patrick leaving the restaurant. She calls to him, but he looks back confused. "Yes, it's me, the one and only. Do you want an autograph?" Rachel, feeling heartbroken that he somehow forgot all about her, walks away. Patrick returns to Wayne Manor when, after entering, he sees that the League of Shadows is there, holding gas cans. Ra's al Ghul approaches Patrick. Bruce, you were supposed to keep a low profile and be Bruce, not this demon you've created, this masked character parading around like the city is your personal circus." Patrick looked Raz in the face. "I did what you could not. I have brought justice and peace to this city. Under my influence, people are too afraid to commit crime." Raz speaks up, saying, "This was not your decision to make. Thanks to your escapades, our plan to destroy Gotham has been significantly delayed. Our man behind the toxin has fled. We will find him, and when we do, our plan will continue as we have designed it. All you have done is delayed the inevitable." Patrick walks over to his music player and starts Get Out by Gotham's very own Metro Castle. Tell me, do you like Metro Castle? To me, Metro Castle's early work was a little too new wave for my taste, but when Delirium came out in '87, I think they really came into their own, commercially and artistically. The whole album has a clear, crisp sound and a new sheen of clear professionalism that really gives the songs a jump in quality. They've been compared to the 22 Hues, but I think Metro Castle has a far more raw, cynical sense of humor. Raz looks to his men. "Burn it down." As they begin to set fire to the manor, one of the shadows attacks Patrick, but he manages to pull out a blade just in time. As Raz moves in for the kill, Patrick spins around in a dance-like motion with the music, getting Raz in the heart. As the manor begins to burn and Raz begins to fade away, he looks into Patrick's eyes and tells him that even this changes nothing, and that at the end of the day, the League of Shadows will accomplish their goal. As the music continues on, Patrick takes out the rest of the shadows in the manor. Patrick hears sirens in the distance. He quickly runs to put on his suit as SWAT pulls up outside and begins entering the manor. Patrick retreats to the top of one of the towers as SWAT begins to climb the stairs. Patrick pulls out a gadget from his belt and activates it. Suddenly, a swarm of bats enters the manor, seemingly from nowhere. They swarm down the stairwell over the SWAT team and allow Patrick the cover he needs for his escape. As he leaves, he can't help but be surprised that this actually worked. The next morning, Patrick throws a party at Wayne Enterprises. After the raid last night, he realizes that the authorities likely know that he is the Batman. He meets with a large gathering and begins to explain to them that the people of Gotham need him. With drink in hand, he says, "If it wasn't for me, the entire city would be destroyed. There was a League of Shadows, you see, run by a man that I defeated last night single-handedly, as well as his entire army of assassins. They planned on using fear gas to make everyone die of fear or something in order to rid Gotham of crime. To be honest, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. You see, after years of training in the mountains to become death itself, I joined this shadowy organization, but I realized after leaving that there was a better way to stop crime. So that's what I'm here to tell you. It was me. I am the Batman. I am the reason you all can sleep soundly, and to be frank, I think I deserve a little appreciation already." The group goes silent until someone speaks up and says, "Well, most of the missing are criminals, and criminals go missing all the time." Patrick reminds them that he also took out criminals like Richard Earle and Falcone. Another person speaks up and says, "But Richard Earle isn't a criminal and he's in France, and Falcone is in a mental hospital." Patrick pauses for a moment. He remembers taking both of them out, and he left both of them in the cave before the manor burned down. Another person in the crowd speaks up, "I'm sorry, Bruce, but didn't you just throw a
large, wild party last night and end up burning down your family home? I mean, are you okay? I figured that's what this meeting was about.
Patrick doesn't quite know how to process this and says, look, I am serious. I am the Batman. I am your savior. I am the reason all of you ungrateful swine have criminals too afraid to come out anymore. Several people begin whispering to each other, talking about how Bruce may be on something. Frustrated and confused, Patrick leaves. He returns to the cave, but can't find any of the evidence. He falls to the ground distraught. Was any of it real? But I know it happened. Suddenly, Alfred approaches and offers encouragement. It's time we get you back up on your feet, Master Wayne. He follows Alfred out as he is told that although Bruce may only see him as a butler, he loves the Wayne family and he would die for it. No matter what Bruce may be going through, he will always be there for him. As they walk through the rubble of the manor, Patrick can't help but wonder what exactly Alfred means by always being there for him. Thank you all so much for watching. This was one that took a lot of research and a lot of thought, so I hope that you all enjoyed this imagining of how Batman Begins might have changed with Patrick Bateman as Batman. I wish you all a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one. Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around. So there's a couple things I want to address real quick. So I know that some people may not like how I pronounced Ra's al Ghul, and I completely understand that because it's not exactly comic accurate. The reason that I pronounce it the way that I do is I'm trying to keep it more geared towards the Batman Begins movie, and since that's how they pronounce it in that film, that's what we went with for this video. For those of you who are a fan of Patrick Bateman or just know the movie pretty well, I'm sure that a lot of you were like, he would have been much more gruesome, much more crass, much more offensive than what I depicted, and I absolutely agree. However, I had to tone down a lot of this, especially his profanity, due to the platform that this is being uploaded to. You have to be really careful how you word things, otherwise the video is definitely not going to show up anywhere. So I had to focus more on the potential actions and decisions that Patrick would have taken, rather than leaning into his psychoticness. As most of you know, the American Psycho film pushed quite a lot of boundaries for films, so obviously we couldn't go as dark as the original character. But regardless, I hope that you guys enjoyed what I did manage to do with it. If you want me to continue this story into the Dark Knight movie, let me know, and I may do that in a future video. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope you guys have a great one. Take care.